Make sure the camera's centered up, boys. We got a good show today because there's a lot going on around Nebraska football. Specifically, a lot going on Twitter this morning when I woke up. You know, I woke up to like 15 texts from different people. I woke up to a bunch of DMs on Instagram, a bunch on Twitter, and then we had a lot of views on the Mickey Joseph pros and cons video that I made yesterday. And I was like, what's going on? So I started looking through. And there's all these rumors that the new head coach is going to be announced today and that it's Mickey Joseph. And then I saw some other rumors that it's Matt Rule. And then I saw some other rumors that nothing was going to happen. And I just tried to piece it all together. And listen, I'm at home all day trying to figure out what we're doing for content. So I'm able to sift through. You, if you're at work or doing whatever you're doing and you've got to get all these updates, I'm sure today was a very confusing day. Things have settled down. We know there is some truth and we know there are falsehoods in a lot of what people have had to say today on Twitter. So I'm glad that I get to be here with you guys today so we can sift through what's true, talk about what the ideal scenarios are, and obviously we're going to talk about the Minnesota game for this weekend because I'm going to be real with you. It's been a really tough week for me as a fan of Nebraska in 2022. Going forward, it hasn't been that bad because I'm thinking about all the opportunity. I've been looking into the transfer portal opportunities, right? I'm like, oh, you know, next year's going to be really fun. But as a fan in 2022, sitting at 3-5 with a daunting schedule ahead, daunting because of our predicament, not daunting because of the teams we play. Daunting because we just don't know what's going on at the quarterback spot, and you never know. Mickey Joseph seems like he can get these guys amped up and ready to roll, but At 3-5, are guys still motivated? You don't know until we get them on the field. So it's been a tough week for me, but I do have a little bit of hope. I have some reasons for hope, which we're going to talk about on this show. I'll answer some questions, and I'm just glad that we all get to be together today to talk about it. So I want to start this off with a couple super chats I saw coming from the Crypto Badger. He knocked out 36 pheasants in 4 hours. Not a bad day. Let's go hunt gophers like that, man. If we could kill 36 gophers, put them down, I think Nebraska has a good shot at winning this game. But unfortunately, the Badger has better luck, I think, than Nebraska will this weekend. But thank you for the $20 super chat, and I'm glad to see you in here. You already dropped another 20. All right. You're telling us that Polar Bear needs to be on the O-line. Well, you were right about the defensive lineman shifting over. So if you didn't see the news already, it came out, I think, Monday. Jalen Weaver, who, what's he, 6'7", something like that, 6'7", 300 something. Defensive end or defensive tackle? One of the two. Can't even remember off top. Doesn't matter. He's now working with the offensive line. He went to Mickey and said, hey, coach, I see there's some struggles there. There have obviously been some injuries, and we just need some fresh blood in the room. So Jalen Weaver has now made the switch. A lot of people said, well, why wasn't Jalen Weaver playing on defensive line, and what's he going to do for the O? Well, here's the thing. He's a gigantic body. He's been out of shape, unfortunately, for at least the beginning of the season, and that's why he wasn't ready to get any reps or opportunities. And, yeah, who knows what type of impact he can make, but hopefully we finally got Crypto Badger's words to the coaching staff, and maybe they'll do something, because he's been calling for a defensive lineman to get switched to the O-line for a long time. So you manifested it. Thank you for the $20, Badger. We appreciate you. Lots of guys in chat right now. I see everybody. I want to answer questions, but I also want to talk about some things I think that we should address first. Here we go. 6'7", 345 for Jalen Weaver. Guy's a monster. And because he's so big, that can really help us to at least have a guy who can put his arms like this, right? And just not be moved. Because if you let a guy maybe try and get around the outside, maybe a quarterback can step up into the pocket, who knows? At this point, I'm hoping that one of these QBs that's going to play can do something to help himself, because the offensive line, as we've seen, isn't going to help you. All right. Let's talk about Minnesota, because I think that's the important part of this show today, because that's the game coming up. And I don't want to get too focused on the future, because although the future is important and the future is what's being talked about primarily by most of us, I'd say we've still got games to play. It's still going to be fun to watch Nebraska out there, but sitting at a 16.5-point underdog at home, the last time that happened, I don't know when. I mean, it's just sad where we're at when it felt like there was a really good chance we could still go bowling. Here's the bright side. So last week, we saw Chubba Purdy come in the game. Well, first we saw Logan Smothers come in the game. Then we saw Chubba Purdy come in. And when Chubba Purdy got in, he didn't look prepared. He didn't look ready. He looked confused. He didn't look like a Division I quarterback. He reminded me of what we saw from Luke McCaffrey, to be honest, in the Illinois game in 2020. Out there just confused and throwing picks, not the elite quarterback that Mark Whipple went out and recruited who fits his system. I think that's where fans really got tweaked, right? You had this guy, Chubba Purdy, who was potentially competing with Casey Thompson for reps over the spring and summer. And when he got out there, okay, well, here's the deal. Mark Whipple came and did a interview and a press conference on Monday. He said, look, there's more to this story. Yes, Chubba looked like a mess. But Chubba was sick or injured. Something happened last week. So there were a couple days of practice before the game where Chubba didn't practice. So he didn't get the reps he should have gotten. He wasn't mentally prepared, clearly. Maybe a little bit physically unable to go. And he went out there and gave it his best shot, given the circumstance. The bright side is he's known since Saturday that he's going to be the starter for this week, or at least is likely going to be the starter. And we'll talk about that more in a second. if he is the starter this week, he's had an entire week now to work with Whipple, to work with Mickey, and to be a part of the game plan. And the game plan hasn't been a game plan for another quarterback. It's been for him, right? He hasn't had any injuries or hasn't been sick this week, to my knowledge. And in that situation, we're going to see a lot better play. We're going to see more comfortability. We're going to see him work with the offense better. And hopefully that leads to some more points. Keep this in mind. Illinois is the better team of Illinois and Minnesota. There's no question about it. And even if Minnesota has better days sometimes or has more potential to higher ceiling, which I don't think they do, but let's say they did, Illinois has been way more consistent. Minnesota has been very choppy. They impressed last week. They won 31-0 against Rutgers. But they've lost some games they shouldn't. They've looked sloppy, even when they did have Mo Ibrahim. And yeah, they're a beatable football team. Here's the thing. Nebraska is a team who can win games. They don't have the depth if they get into situations, as we talked about last week with Illinois. They got into a predicament, although they were winning at the moment that Casey Thompson was in, they could not finish the game with any offensive production because he went out. And although the defense was having, I choose my words carefully, a decent day. The defense wasn't abysmal the way they were against Georgia Southern. They weren't dominant the way they were against, I don't know if we call them dominant. We could call them dominant against Rutgers because they did a very good job against them. The team cannot win unless the team plays well, is what we're learning, right? You've got to have the offense be able to make some moves for the defense to be able to thrive. I mean, it's something we learned last year. The defense was elite, and the defense would have won a lot of games if they had an offense who could close, an offense who could score in the red zone, an offense who wouldn't turn it over, right? But you need the complete package to win in the Big Ten. Anyway, the point I was trying to make and the point I want to get back to is about Minnesota this week. Minnesota is a team that Nebraska can beat. And Nebraska is a 16-point underdog at home. First thing I want to say. First thing. I'm going right here. This is my play for the week. Just so there's no confusion. I love this. I'm putting a unit on Nebraska. I love Nebraska to cover this week. So just so we know where I stand, I'm not saying a win, but plus 16 to me is absurd. Absurd. What are we doing at plus 16? Well, the line is saying that the backup quarterbacks aren't going to be able to function against a Minnesota defense who's decent. I don't believe that at all. Just like I said before, Chubba Purdy's going to be a lot more prepared. He knows what he's in for. And on top of that, we've heard that Casey Thompson is a game-time decision. Casey Thompson himself has gone to Mickey and said, I'm ready to go. Shocker to me. My understanding was after Saturday, that dude's hand couldn't close. He had nerve damage, and I thought, this dude's out for the year. There's no way we're seeing him again. There's something that got struck in his shoulder or wrist or hand, something. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy who watches the game. But I saw the way he was clinching and couldn't move. I would be shocked to see him play. But the fact that he's saying he's ready to go means that he can grab the ball, means that he can put spin on it. If you're Mickey Joseph, he's all about players, right? He's all about making sure they're ready. He's not going to put someone out there who shouldn't play. But if you're Mickey Joseph, you're still in play to be the next head coach at Nebraska, potentially. If you put Casey in, you could outright win this game. I mean, I think Nebraska has a, albeit tiny chance to win with their backups. But with Casey, Nebraska could absolutely beat Minnesota at home. I think Nebraska would have won last week at home with Casey healthy the entire time, and I think Illinois presents bigger problems than Minnesota will. So, yeah, it would be very interesting to me if Mickey did play Casey. I would be surprised. I would put the odds at what? 30%, 25% Casey goes. But that's still something. It's a big deal. It matters. So, just something to think about. I don't know what's going to happen. Nebraska, Minnesota, though, should be entertaining either way. This 16-point spread does not mean you shouldn't watch it. I'll tell you that right now. Nebraska's showing up. They're going to fight. I do think that Minnesota has the edge because of the offensive predicament we're in. But Nebraska's a Big Ten West team. Minnesota's a Big Ten West team. As we've learned from Big Ten West teams, none of them are very good. Even Illinois, when they were going up against Nebraska, who was fighting with one arm, I think they won by, 16, 17, something, whatever. They didn't win in a blowout. So just my thoughts. Crypto Badger's back with another $20 super chat. We appreciate you. I'm curious on the chat's thoughts about DS as a coach. DS is short for Deion Sanders. I'm out of this Wisconsin game unless we went out to that point. But you're welcome to come slay some birds. I even have a Benelli shotgun for you to use. Dude, my dad has a Benelli shotgun. Those are awesome. I actually used one when I was in Oklahoma a couple months ago. Okay. Chat, thoughts on Deion. Let's see. I'm sure some people already put their thoughts in here. Zach says Deion isn't coming. Roger says Deion loves Runzas. And Crypto Badger's point about Deion is he's a proven player at the highest level. He's turned his team around in a massive way. And he knows how to coach and motivate guys. And he knows a big college is going to get him. Yeah, I mean, he is a guy who I do believe will end up getting a big-time job. I don't know if Nebraska's the right fit for him right now. I'm not sure. We'll see what chat has to say. So I think that the thing is people don't think Deion would come. Start there. It'd be hard to get him. And even if you do, I'm surprised. People are saying no to Deion, no to Deion. Well, here's a question. Before we even talk more about the rumors, I'm going to put two coaches out there. Matt Rule or Deion Sanders? Make your pick. I'm just curious. Chat, let me know in the comments. Matt Rule, Deion Sanders. No A or B. I don't want to confuse myself. Just Matt or Deion. Deion. Matt Rule can get lost. Deion. We don't want Deion. Don't want Matt Rule either. Okay, so most people say Deion over Matt Rule. So, wow. A lot of people are saying Deion over Matt Rule. Okay, so my personal take, I'm considering, wow. A lot of Deions. Okay, so I'm considering doing a video on Matt Rule because the rumors have been so hot in his favor. I try to be positive. I try not to cuss because I get DMs from moms who say they listen to the show with their kids and they don't want to have me dropping F-bombs to their 6-year-old. When I saw the rumors for Matt Rule today, moms wouldn't have wanted to watch me. They wouldn't have let me in their house. I was loud. I was frustrated. I was calling my cousin, hitting him with a bunch of WTFs over text. I was thinking, Matt Rule? The guy who took over at Temple, who was already an 8-9 win team every year. The guy who took over at Baylor after they had won, I think, 7 games and then won 1 game in his first year, but followed it up with some productive seasons, but then left for the NFL, did nothing there. There's a difference between a bad hire, a hire, and a good hire, in my opinion. A bad hire is when you have a bias towards a coach who has proven nothing. And you say, I see this guy Mike Riley at Oregon State. He's never been hyper competitive. He's won some okay games, had a couple NFL players. He's a good guy, and he feels like he'd be a fit at my program. He and I talked on the phone, and I like him. He's affordable. Hey, easy, let's bring him in. To me, that's a bad hire situation. Then you have a good hire situation. Bill Moose calls Scott Frost, hey, buddy, look, we need you back. Oh, I'm comfortable. I'm at UCF. I'm about to be a national champion, and I've got this great resume. I can go coach anywhere I want. I don't need to come to that disaster school. Yeah, but we need you back. So I'm going to fly out to meet you wherever you are this week, and we're going to have a conversation. Okay, you can come, but it's a lot of money, and there's other coaches calling me. Okay, fine, but I'm coming. And then I'm going to put pressure on you over and over and over to force you to come just so you don't go to a place like Florida. Because I know you love Florida. and you'd love to live there, you're going to get the money, and then you don't have to have the problems with your home school. If things do go wrong, you can just get fired from another place and keep on with life and not feel like you wronged a bunch of people you love and care about, right? You force it, and finally get to hire him. That's a good hire. Okay, we've identified a good and a bad hire, right? Now let's talk about a hire. So you get an F for a bad hire, you get an A for a great hire, a good hire, and you get a C for a hire. A hire is when you pick up the phone and call a guy you know will say yes, because what other options do they have? What other options are out there right now? Well, let's talk about it. You've got Georgia Tech. Does that hold a candle to Nebraska? Okay, we're going to move on. Arizona State. Who? No. Okay. Wisconsin already has their head coach. We don't need to worry about that. I'm very confident they're going to roll with Jim Leonhard. The only other only other school who's close to Nebraska, I mean, there's Colorado. Again, what are we talking about? Let's keep it real. The only school who's competing with Nebraska for a head coach is down in the SEC. They are in fertile recruiting ground. They have a very strong fan base like Nebraska has, and they have a stadium just as big. They have a brand new facility getting built. They've got a bigger, I think twice as big NIL fund ready to go. They're a legitimate contender to get whatever coach Nebraska wants. They're the only competition we've got, though. Okay. There are a lot of coaches out there who are looking for jobs right now who aren't coaching at schools, or that are coaching at schools but ready to get out. Offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, for example, who would jump ship right when the last game of the season ended. They wouldn't even care about playing in the bowl game. And there's a bunch of head coaches who feel the exact same way. They wouldn't care about the bowl game. They'd say, let me move on and start this build. Okay. We talked about the bad, the good. Here's a regular hire. You go to a coach named Matt Rule. And you say, hey, Matt, are you interested in coming to Nebraska? Yes. Oh, okay. We'll see you Monday. That is what Matt Rule is to me. Where else is he going to go? People try and argue, well, Matt Rule is getting paid, I don't know, $40 million or something to not coach. He wants to coach. That guy's like in his 40s or he's young. He wants to be a coach somewhere and rebuild his career. And his name's hot right now, so he's got to get back engaged. He can't just lay on the couch for 2 years. He's got to get engaged. So where else is Matt Rule going to go? Arizona State? Georgia Tech? No, he wants to be at a big name school. I can tell you one school who's not going after him, Auburn. So what's left? Okay, that's what a good hire is to me. Chat, if I'm wrong, you can let me know, but that's just my opinion about a good, bad, and a good, bad, and just an okay hire. And to be honest, if you make an okay hire, that's a fireable offense if things don't go right. Just my opinion, because why would you go out and do the easy thing, the basic thing, the bare minimum thing? Go get a guy who's okay, he's a football coach. We need a football coach. Let's put one in here. What's the difference between that and Mickey Joseph? Honestly, he has more experience as a head coach. I will give him that. He has a couple of winning seasons as a head coach. One at a Power 5 school, a couple at a non-Power 5. So that's a huge benefit, right? He's been a defensive mind, an offensive mind. I think he's been an offensive coordinator. He hasn't been a defensive coordinator, but he has been a defensive position coach. But he's been out of college football for a couple years. He's going to have to build a brand new staff. Technically, it's a better hire than Mickey Joseph, but emotionally, does it feel like a better hire than Mickey Joseph? Just saying. Like I said, I don't know. I'm a guy who just sits here and talks with you guys, just BSing, giving ideas. It's just tough. Chat says they're all in on Mickey. They'd rather Mickey, and some people don't think that Trev's gonna make the okay hire. I hope he doesn't. Honestly, the okay hire would just be a letdown. Ugh. Getting through chat, guys. Well, here's what the rumors were today. It started off with Mickey Joseph is going to be announced as head coach, which to me was a shocker. Why would we be naming Mickey Joseph the head coach coming off of 2 losses, going into a game against Minnesota? It just didn't make sense. The timing didn't add up. What would be the point, right? You could wait another week, see how this week goes, and then announce it on Monday. It just didn't add up. Okay, so it started there. Then it moved over to Matt Rule somehow, which was another one that was confusing. I think it came from the Auburn message boards is what happened. So an Auburn message board, one of those paid private servers, people were saying, hey, Auburn's not going after Rule. And it sounds like they're dead set on Kiffin. Auburn's not going after Matt Rule. He has other coaches, or he has other schools pursuing him as their next head coach. They didn't name Nebraska, I don't think. When that happened, everyone said, well, the only other school out there looking for a head coach that's on Auburn's level is Nebraska. So now everyone says, well, Nebraska's going after Matt Rule. And then the rumor got going, Matt Rule, Matt Rule, Matt Rule. And when you think about it, if there is actually a meeting going on among the Board of Regents or whoever makes these decisions, the donors, Trev Alberts, who knows? If there is actually a meeting going on and they have found their head coach, Matt Rule makes sense. Or Mickey Joseph makes sense. It's a coach who's not at another school, because if they got, hypothetical, it's not going to happen, if they got Lane Kiffin isn't going to be announced as head coach at Nebraska anytime soon. It's going to be another month. So the only one that would make sense is Mickey or a guy who's not coaching. So just keep it in mind. That's where the rumors came from. It ignited this firestorm on Twitter. We'll talk about Twitter in just 1 second. Let me answer this super chat. Thank you for the $20, Badger. We appreciate you. You stack Deion Sanders as head coach, Mickey Joseph as OC, and leave Fish as DC. You lost me on that last one. I saw you try to slip it in. You're not gonna get away with that one. Fish is part of the old staff. And as I choose my words carefully. Have the DBs been great at Nebraska? Have they been developed to a really high level? Or have they just been okay? I don't know. To me, they've been good, but not great. And the problem is, if you're going to keep a coach who is part of this old staff, I would think he'd need to be great. That's just my opinion. It would be odd to me to keep the one coach from the former staff, from Scott Frost's staff, to keep that one coach. I would think he'd want to leave. He'd say, I need new energy. I'm going to have this whole new staff come in, and then I'm the last guy who came from the mess. Sounds a little odd. I would think they'd go for a different DC. Not sure about Mickey as OC, but I wouldn't hate it. It'd be interesting. The problem is I've heard that Mickey isn't an X and O guy. Because he's not an X and O guy, he's much more fit to be a head coach or a position coach or an associate head coach or recruiting coordinator, whatever you want to call him. But he's not an X and O guy, so he's not really a play caller. That's my understanding. So who knows? I'm just not sure. Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact Deion's not going to get considered. I think it's BS. I think Deion should get considered, and I wish he would. He's just not going to. Because if you're going to give it to Deion, a lot of people will say, well, why didn't you give it to Mickey? Because Deion doesn't have that much proven anything. Deion's been a coach at one place ever. Mickey's got, 20 years of coaching experience? Although it isn't all from Power 5. It's at least 20 years, right? He's got some serious relationships as well. Deion has his own relationships. They're just a different type of relationship. So, just a thought. Thank you for the $20 super chat. Thank you for helping me to start a conversation, because that is something cool to think about. The recruiting would go through the freaking roof in that situation. Here's another one from Ryan. Mickey is head coach, Will Muschamp as defensive coordinator. Bill Bush is the secondaries coach, and maybe Whipple as OC if he's healthy. Otherwise, we go out and get a new one. My guess is they're going to get a new one. So here's a scenario. I asked my cousin a question earlier about Matt Rule and Mickey and if it all would work and how it would go. They said my cousin Jansen said if Matt Rule comes to Nebraska, Mickey stays as a wide receivers coach. Can you guys guess who would be Nebraska's offensive coordinator? I'm not going to give any names. In the chat, please let me know. Matt Rule is head coach. Mickey Joseph is wide receivers coach. Who do you think would be the offensive coordinator? Chat, let me know. I'm ready. Whoever Matt Rule had at Carolina, Scott Frost, the Syracuse guy, Joe Brady. Bang, bang. There we go. We got two of them. The chef listed it. We'll go with this one. So, Joe Brady was the passing game coordinator at LSU, right? He was successful in that role. He did not call plays, I don't believe. But he did help with the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and that was the main part of that offense that went. The main part of that offense, or the main part of that team, really, that made them so elite and took them to the next level. Joe Brady was 30, 31 at the time. He then left after that and went over to Carolina with Matt Rule, became the offensive coordinator for the Panthers in the COVID year and last year. Things did not work out, obviously, and he was out. Where'd he go? Buffalo Bills. He is the current quarterbacks coach for Josh Allen. I'm not sure what the path is for him. I'm not sure what his plan is. My guess is, hey, going to be the quarterbacks coach for the best quarterback in the NFL, probably a pretty good step. Something you can get yourself into and work up from, right? Not sure if it would lead to an offensive coordinator position in the pros or just force your way back into college. Either way, I'm sure he's looking to get back into a position of leadership, a position where he can really thrive, and that would be as an offensive coordinator, specifically at a Power 5 school, a former blue blood, with his, Mickey Joseph, who was, I'm not sure, Mickey Joseph probably wasn't the passing game coordinator or not as involved as he was at Nebraska, because at Nebraska, he was the passing game coordinator, associate head coach, and the wide receivers coach. So still had a hand in it with Joe Brady. He gets to work with Mickey again, gets to work with Matt Rule again, who fired him just last year. It would be an intriguing trio, I would say. I'm not sure how it would work out. There's a lot of question marks that I have around Joe Brady still. My cousin made the point that when you go and hire a lot of offensive coordinators, they were formerly position coaches. In Joe Brady's case, he had a lot of experience with the passing game when he was over at LSU. Because of that, he's obviously has some college, I don't want to call it play calling, but some scheme and design experience. So he does know how to do it in college. And he got a lot of experience at Carolina. 2 years being an offensive coordinator in the NFL is no joke, even if you sucked at it, right? So it would be an intriguing hire, in my opinion. They had rumored that he could potentially go to Miami last year as the offensive coordinator. So, yeah, that's where people are putting the rumors out right now. There are going to be a lot that come, though. I still full-heartedly believe we're not going to know for another couple weeks at least. Maybe if it's Matt Rule, it comes out, I don't know, 10 days from now. Comes out after the Michigan game, something like that. If it's Mickey Joseph, I just feel like it's not going to be Mickey. But if it is Mickey, let's say he wins against Minnesota, I think he could be named the head coach going into Michigan. Very, very possible. Because I think the Minnesota game would tell Trev all he needs to know. That's kind of the last piece, right? You beat Minnesota, you get the job. You lose to Minnesota, it's over. You're demoted back to wide receivers coach, which wouldn't really be a demotion because he was already a wide receivers coach this year, whatever. To keep him, they're going to have to pay him probably the same amount they're going to pay the offensive coordinator anyway, or close to. Either way, the other thing about Matt Rule is going to be affordable because Matt Rule is already, I don't know how much Matt Rule, or I don't know the exact number Matt Rule got for his buyout. Let me just check, just so I am accurate. Matt Rule buyout. $40 million. Okay. North of $40 million. So let's say $42 million to get excited or exciting. $40 million. How much does Nebraska need to pay? Because the Panthers are going to pay the rest of it. Well, Nebraska could get away with paying market value, which could potentially be $4 million a year. That would be among the lowest in the Big Ten. I think that Matt Rule would obviously accept it because he already has the back end of that being paid for by the Panthers. So Nebraska could get away with paying that, and you wouldn't have a massive buyout, which would be good because then if Matt Rule failed, you could get rid of him, just like I talked about in the Mickey Joseph video yesterday. And if you haven't watched the Mickey Joseph video yesterday, I strongly suggest you do. I did a video where I broke down the pros and the cons to hiring Mickey Joseph as a head coach. I will say I was surprised by the reaction in the comments. There were a lot of comments in support of Mickey Joseph, way more in support of keeping Mickey Joseph than letting him go. Surprising, but yeah, that's where we're at as a fan base. Hey, Daniel, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. We appreciate you and all the support. We appreciate all the members. We've got a lot of them. Caleb, thank you for the $5 super chat. Which coach do you think would be the perfect hire, realistic option or not? It's tough when we say the perfect hire, right? Because nothing is going to be perfect. A really good hire, I'm going to give you a few names because I can't give you one because everyone's got their flaws. The only perfect hire, in my opinion, would be Urban Meyer. That would be perfect because Urban Meyer has Big Ten experience. He's an elite head coach no matter where he goes and what school he's with. He's proved that at Bowling Green. He's proved that at Utah before they were in the Pac-12. He's proved that when he had to rebuild Ohio State after they had some sanctions. He's proved that at Florida, where he inherited a team who wasn't elite. So anyway, he's proved to be a program builder, and he cultivates great staffs. Okay, start there. That's a great one. More realistic hire. It'll never happen. So I don't even like to say it because I don't want to get people's hopes up. Because I made a video and I talked about the guy, and now it just feels like a lot of people have been messaging me about him. Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin runs the ball well. He recruits to the highest level. He's been successful in the SEC. He has experience at the highest level in the Pac-12, coaching a national champion USC team. He's been successful in rebuilding FAU, Ole Miss. I mean, the guy has proven it across the board, but he would never get looked at by Trev, in my opinion. He's a wild card, and even though he's fixed his issues, he's got some baggage. The guy, there was a story told. He would miss his bus frequently after games when he was at Alabama. So I'm just guessing that Trev Alberts wants a guy who's punctual and on top of his shit, right? Because Scott Frost wasn't. Rumors, don't know if it's true. Supposedly he wasn't out there on time all the time. He wasn't out there doing what he was supposed to do as a leader of men. He wasn't a good representation. Okay, Lane Kiffin has shown that he isn't either. Lane Kiffin, like I said, missed the bus. So they would get done with the game. They'd all go to shower or talk to the media. Then everybody's on the bus at, let's say, 8:30. Lane Kiffin comes out at 9. Where'd the bus go? Lane, you got the schedule. You missed the bus. How do you do that multiple times? And Nick Saban did not like that one bit. My guess is that Trev talks to Nick Saban, or at least reached out to him. Maybe his agent, I'm not sure. However, the agent shares Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin, so who knows if the agent would be a good guy to talk to since he's the salesman. But the point is, I don't think Trev would entertain that because of the rumors when he was at Alabama. And he's just a quirky guy. Doesn't fit the Nebraska mold. The Nebraska mold's a little bit more like the Dave Aranda. Put your head down, go to work, stay focused. You're not kind of a clown. He's a little bit of a clown in a good way. But anyway, that's probably my top. That's my top hire, perfect hire, realistic or not. It's not realistic though. Yeah. The Badger's back. Thank you for the $20 super chat. In order for me, Urban Meyer, great number 1. Deion Sanders is number 2. You are sold on this guy. He texted me, we're talking about Crypto Badger. Crypto Badger texted me last night while I was at the Laker game, a video of Deion Sanders talking to his team. It was a pretty good video. Anyway, he has been on this Deion train. He's texted me about him a few different times, so he's all in. Okay, we got Mickey Joseph as your number 3. Lane Kiffin is your number 4. I've got to put Lane Kiffin ahead of Mickey because I think you would get Mickey if you got Lane Kiffin. Like, you would keep Mickey. I think Lane would love to have him as part of his staff, and I think that recruiting pair would be unbelievable. All these guys would be recruiting masters. Here's one issue, and thank you for the $20 super chat, Badger. Here's one issue I'm going to say with Matt Rule. The transfer portal has become king in college football. It has become the free agency aspect, right? It's become the place where you go to replace your team after they all leave when you get rid of your head coach, which is what Nebraska's done. Let's say we lose, I don't know how many, but let's say we need to add 30 players this cycle. I don't know how many they're going to need to add, but let's just use 30 as a rough number. Matt Rule comes in. Well, he's not in another school where he's winning. He doesn't have any ties to any current players because he's been in the NFL since COVID, which is like going to be 3 years now. So it's not like he's going to come in and be a splash guy where people are like, oh, I got to come play for Matt Rule. That one hurts a bit when we talk about the Matt Rule hire. Whereas if you go to Leipold, or if you go to Kleiman, or Lane Kiffin, or whoever, and you say, hey, you're now the head coach at Nebraska, what do you think they do? Well, what happened last year? What happened with name's blanking, starts with an L, Lincoln Riley at USC? He went and tore up the portal and got a bunch of his players from OU to come over to SC, and that happens at a bunch of different schools who got new, or a bunch of different coaches who got new jobs at different schools. They were able to pull their players from their other school, and if they weren't, they were able to go and attract other players just because they had a big name. Brian Kelly at LSU, for example, he gets there. He has a proven track record for success at Notre Dame. He goes and lands one of the best quarterbacks in the portal in Jaden Daniels, who left Arizona State. Could Matt Rule do that? I think he could, 100%. Does he give Nebraska the best opportunity to pull coaches like that, or to pull players like that? I'm sorry. I'm not sure. Like I said before, there's a difference between a good hire, a great hire, and a bad hire. I still judge this as an okay hire. Like, good job, you did your job, but it's not something that's going to be, hell yeah, you did something big for Nebraska. It's just kind of like, yeah, good, cool, we've got a coach now. You hired a guy. It's tough, man. I don't know the answers. Daniel, thank you for the $10 super chat. Don't have to show this. I'm going to show it. I'm sure you took my bet last week against Brothrow, and we worked together to cancel that bet. Maybe I shouldn't have, but never bet against my Huskers. Oh, yeah. So Daniel accidentally last week bet against me. So he took Illinois. I took Nebraska. And we ended up canceling that bet because he wanted to be on Nebraska. Unfortunately, you're right, Daniel. You would have ended up winning that bet because Nebraska lost their quarterback, and we had 0% chance to keep it close after he went out. But yeah, maybe you shouldn't have canceled it. But you'll win the next one, I'm confident. Thank you for the $10. We appreciate you. Woodgie says, Matt Rule would bribe players. Is that true? Does he do that? I haven't heard any stories. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, bribing players in 2022 looks like giving them NIL packages, which I would love to see some more NIL packages. Is that bribery? I don't think so. Bill says, the downside of not hiring Mickey is Arizona State taking him and Malachi and other following that hire. I'm going to be honest, I don't think Arizona State's going to hire him. I do think there's a chance somebody could offer him. He hasn't shown enough this year to say he's some spectacular head coach. He is a proven recruiter, no doubt, but a team even like Arizona State or Colorado would much rather go for someone with a bit more experience. Mickey's still got a couple more years to build up that resume to compete with some of these other guys who are out there for big time jobs. Any Power 5 job is a big time job because of how much money they pay, right? So the guy Kenny Dillingham, the former Auburn OC, now the Oregon OC, he's going to probably get a job this year, a big time job. That's Arizona State's target is what we heard. So I'm not too worried about it. That's just where I'm going to leave it. I do think there's a really good chance that teams entertain it, but I think he's going to stay here. Never Mind Me says, hire Mickey with contract stipulations. Can't pay him the big bucks until he proves himself. $3 million a year with big bonuses for winning seasons until he's proven himself. Here's the thing. When people talk about money, I don't understand. Like, maybe you can explain this better to me. Why does it matter how much we pay a coach? Honestly, why does it matter if we pay a guy $7 million a year or $3 million a year? Because you and I still make a regular amount of money, and you and I aren't contributing anything to that coach's salary. So it's not our business, right? And even if Nebraska does hire a guy for $7 million or $3 million, it's not gonna change anything, I think is my point. The only time it changes is when you give these super contracts, when you max them out like they're NBA players, when you do what you did with Jimbo Fisher. or what Dabo Sweeney has, or Lincoln Riley, or Nick Saban. I'm trying to think of some other names. There's a lot of these coaches who've gotten these super maxes. A super max is like 10-year deal, guaranteed for $100 million. That's a little bit harder to get out of. But when you're just giving a guy $6 million, $7 million, whatever, you're going to fire him just like you'd fire a guy who's making $3 million, and it's not going to hurt you. So to me, it doesn't matter if there's contract stipulations. I prefer we spend the money necessary to get the right coach. There was someone who said, it was a rumor, I don't know where I saw it, maybe Twitter or something, that Lane Kiffin won't be Nebraska's next head coach because Trev Alberts doesn't want to spend the money that Lane Kiffin would require. And I 100% believe that to be true. I think to get Lane Kiffin, he needs a 7-year guarantee at $10 million a year. That's my opinion. And yeah, I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Trev Alberts wants to do that. The problem is when you get into these big super deals, you get locked in and you can't get out. Mel Tucker just did a 10-year, $90 million deal. Well, Mel Tucker is in his second year. He's having a worse year than his first year. So his success wasn't sustainable, clearly. He has players who are fighting. The culture is rough at Michigan State. It always has been. They've always been a school who has let things slide, put it nicely. And they have players who aren't disciplined. So this is a pattern that's been going on at Michigan State for years. He hasn't corrected it. And now you're locked into this guy's deal. How do you fire him? You don't. How do you fire Jimbo Fisher? You don't. You accept the fact that you messed up. You accept the fact that we gave him too much. It's kind of like the Scott Frost thing when we say, what was Bill Moose thinking giving this guy an extension? Similar circumstance. That's why Nebraska can't go and get one of these super coaches, because they won't take the risk. And I don't blame them. I think it's really hard to take a risk like that, because just like it's a fireable offense, in my opinion, to hire a guy who's just okay, it's also a fireable offense to go and do that. So who knows? You got to be really sure about what you're doing. If you said it was Urban Meyer, I think you do it. I don't think you can't afford not to do it, right? If he actually wanted to come and you said, well, it's going to cost us $100 million, hey, it's a sure thing. And it's the only sure thing. Lane Kiffin isn't a sure thing, let me tell you. That guy is a great head coach. He's been good for a long time, great recruiter. He would do some really positive things, in my opinion. He would draw a lot of attention. The brand would grow. We'd have a lot more Nebraska fans because there are a lot of guys who are just Lane Kiffin fans, period. I am. I have LSU gear in my closet right now because I'm a Lane Kiffin fan. Crazy. Think about that. And wherever he goes next, I will follow that guy on social media. I'll be entertained by his daughter's TikToks when she posts this, the funny stuff he does on there. I mean, I like the guy. No homo. So, yeah, it's an interesting circumstance we're in. That's all I'm going to say about it. I'm getting back to chat, guys. Sorry. Throwing money at coaches doesn't result in wins. Yeah, I think that's very true, and that's kind of the point I was making. I don't know. There's a point when money does result in wins, right? Because if you don't play the game, you're never going to win. So you got to go after one of the guys who's competitive, and it's going to cost money to get there. But you don't have to overextend. You don't have to be over the top like some of these other schools did. Michigan State went over the top because they had to. Because Mel Tucker would have been a candidate for Nebraska, right? I mean, not after this year. But let's say Mel Tucker had another 9-win season this year, there are a lot of schools who would want Mel Tucker, a lot of them. And if Michigan State didn't lock him up when they did, next year, if he would have had 9 wins this year, he would have been even more expensive and harder to keep because another school would have come with a bigger bag. So that's kind of the situation with all this money. It's very interesting, and it's all changing so quickly. That's one of the reasons I love college football so much, right? There's so much parity, there's so much happening, and so much news developing. The new NIL deals, this new way the coaching is going. Coaching, what's crazy about coaching in college, there is more money for the top college football head coaches than there is for the top NFL coaches. How crazy is that? I think Belichick probably gets $9 million a year. Maybe he gets 10. But nobody else does. The normal head coaches in the NFL are getting 4, 5, 6 million max. A normal head coach. In college, baseline now for a good program is 5 million. That's like entry level. If you're a real football program, you've got a real head coach, that dude's getting 7 million a year minimum. And if you have an elite guy, 9, 10, 11, 12 isn't out of the question. That's where this is going. It is crazy, and it's a lot to keep up with. Everything's changing as we go. Dan says a Rule would cause a logjam in the tunnel. Is Matt Rule overweight? I don't get it. Matt Rule doesn't look fat to me. Brad Bielema would cause a logjam. That dude's a big dude. People have made a lot of comments about him being a big guy. Matt Rule isn't that big. Let me show you guys, just so we're not confused. Matt Rule's a normal-sized man. Look at that. That's a normal-sized man. He's, probably 250 pounds. Nothing crazy. Log jam. Come on, don't be disrespectful. It's a normal-sized guy. Galactus said, what did I miss? More coach speculation. Well, here's what we've talked about so far. We've talked about the Minnesota game this week. We've talked about some players, specifically quarterbacks who could or couldn't play, what it looks like with each of those situations. And I told you guys that I'm taking Nebraska plus 16. I love that bet. If you want to bet it, you can go to BroThrow, just brothrow.com/GBR. You'll be able to make picks with me or anybody else. That's the sponsor of our channel. They help it so I can go live all the time. They help it so I can make all these videos because it takes a lot of time to do it. So this is kind of becoming my full-time job during the football season. Anyway, if you want to bet on that, again, like I said, I love Nebraska plus 16 this week. And it hasn't gotten accepted yet, I don't think. Let's see. It's right here. $65. That's one unit for me. Nebraska plus 16. So if you want to bet it and you're on BroThrow, all you do is hit open a bet, spread, Nebraska, put in how much money you want to put on it, done. Someone will accept that bet. So it's that simple if you want to use it. Anyway, that's what you missed so far. We also talked a little bit about the coaches. It was less about coach speculation and more about theory, ideas on what would happen if certain coaches got hired. We had an idea about, what was it? I think I talked about a good hire versus an okay hire versus a bad hire. So we've talked about some pretty good things. So if you haven't been on since the beginning of the show, I strongly suggest once we're done with this live to go back and watch it from the beginning, because I think we made some good progress today, talking about the rumors, talking about this game this week, and talking about some other positive things. Positive things for 2023, because this year has been a little rocky and it doesn't look like things are getting any better anytime soon. Tom says, Baylor was successful with Art Briles and with Matt Rule and with Dave Aranda. Part of my question of Aranda, Baylor has came up in the other sports too. ACC was stupid to not get Baylor. Baylor's a good spot. I think your point is Baylor's successful no matter who the head coach is. Is that your point? Because I agree with you. And that's why I've been questioning Dave Aranda. Not so much anymore. I do have a lot more faith in him. I really like how Baylor looks right now. I actually think Baylor could beat Oklahoma this week. They're 3.5-point dogs. They're on the road. Oklahoma's looked a lot better. Dylan Gabriel's playing good again. But Baylor has gotten better as the season goes on. I like their defense. Their offense can throw it as well as they can run it. So I'm a big Baylor guy right now. I don't think we have a chance at Aranda, though. There's just something in my gut that says Aranda is no longer an option. Don't quote me, because who knows? I'm asking questions all the time. I'm looking at things online. I don't know. It just feels like Aranda's not an option. Daniel, thank you for the $5 super chat. Mickey Joseph will go nowhere no matter what. Stop it, people. For Frost to get him here is a miracle. No coach in college football would let him go. Duh. I agree with you that no coach that comes to Nebraska will let him go. I'm 100% on board with that. But here's the thing. If Nebraska makes a bad hire and Mickey doesn't get along with him, I promise you, Mickey will dip. I don't think Nebraska will make a bad hire that's so bad, though, that Mickey wouldn't like him. If another school comes calling, Colorado, Arizona State, and they say, hey, we're going to streamline this. We know your future is bright. We know it's going to take you a couple of years to build into this elite head coach we know you can be, but we'll give you the leash. So 7-year deal or 6-year deal. Bring all your recruits from Nebraska. Go and get all the guys from the SEC. Let's build a powerhouse in the Pac-12. We have no competition. If I'm Mickey Joseph, it's like, I can stay at Nebraska as a wide receivers coach under somebody else, or I can go be king. If you're Mickey Joseph, what are you doing? Oh, also you'll make 4 to 5 to 6 times as much money at the other place. What are you doing? I mean, that's the one fear. Just a thought. But who knows what's actually going to happen? Who knows. But thank you for the $5. We appreciate it. Jim says, "Do you think Brett is a legitimate candidate?" No, I don't think he is. No way that Brett leaves right now. He's building a big house in Illinois, I guess. He's from Illinois. I think his family likes it there. His wife does. Someone said that. And he's building something good at Illinois, so at the school. So they're going to give him a bigger contract. He'll be locked in, and he has no reason to leave. I think that's a really good spot for him. And the expectations are low, so less stressful situation. If you're Brett Bielema, you've already competed at the highest level at Wisconsin. You've won some Rose Bowls. You've done poorly in the SEC, but you still played in the SEC, or sorry, coached in the SEC. So you've reached some higher levels, and now it's time to relax and play or coach a less stressful place, in my opinion, which is Illinois. So I think that's a really good spot for him. I don't think he's leaving. He says it's about the boys. Mickey's not leaving Nebraska. It is about the boys, but he could just tell the boys, hey, I got a once in a lifetime opportunity. I've got to leave. And if you want to come with me, the portal's right there. Just saying. Not saying it would happen. I'm just saying. Dom, you had a long day on the ambulance and you came home to this? I'm glad. I had a long day too. I had to work on some stuff, put things together, and now I got to get on here with you guys and BS for the last hour, talk about college football. So I enjoy this a lot more than working. But thank you for being here. Tom says, I think turning around Kansas is 10 times more impressive than turning around Baylor, just in my opinion. No, you are 100% correct. Baylor is in the heart of Texas. Baylor does have some competition with recruiting because of their location, but Baylor is night and day a stronger program than Kansas has been in the last 15 years. Kansas, the turnaround Leipold's done has been really impressive. I think that's kind of the point. And every coach at Baylor, ever since Art Briles, to me, Baylor has a really strong brand. They have a Heisman Trophy winner in Robert Griffin III. They've played in what do we call it, a decent conference where every game was winnable. So these coaches to me aren't elite coaches for fixing Baylor because they've inherited a school who's already good. They've had a couple down years, a 1-win season under Rule, a 2-win season under Dave Aranda. And outside of that, they've both been really successful. So, yeah, I don't think the Baylor turnaround or coaching job is a rebuild. So there's no proven rebuild if you go to Baylor. But Kansas, yeah, you rebuilt Kansas. That's very impressive. Do you think any starters on our offense or our defense will transfer after this year? That's been something I've been trying to think about. I'm sure. I mean, it's inevitable, right? Unless you had a really crazy coach come in. A starter leaving would mean that the coach who comes in runs a different style of offense or defense that that player wants to play in. So let's say Nebraska wants to go air raid with Mike Leach. Well, let's say Anthony Grant's at Nebraska or A.J. Allen, for example. They both might say, well, we don't fit in that offense, so we're getting out of here right now because we're not fit. So a lot of it is going to be something we can't kind of plan for. It's just going to be known once the new head coach comes in. So I don't know. I don't even want to make any predictions or make any assumptions because I don't think there are any players right now who we're looking at and saying, oh, I'm afraid we're going to lose them. Really, the only player I'm afraid we're going to lose is Trey Palmer to the NFL draft or potentially a couple other guys. But I think we'll see once we get towards the end of the year and once we know what the head coach situation looks like. I do know that we have too many running backs. So we're going to lose some running backs because if A.J. Allen stays and Anthony Grant stays, Yant doesn't have much opportunity. He'll never be the starter. Ramir Johnson doesn't have very much opportunity, and neither does Gabe Irvin. So that could be 3 guys all who dip. Who knows? We'll see. But we are going to lose some guys, so who knows? But Tyler says we're going to lose guys for sure. Surprised only one has gone. And that's just a testament to Mickey Joseph and Bill Bush. They've done a great job at keeping these guys engaged, surprisingly. I mean, I'm very surprised. I thought we were going to see at least 5 guys hit the portal, and yeah, we only saw 1. So, who knows? The truth says, look at what Matt Rule walked into at Baylor. A disaster, a dumpster fire after the Art Briles disaster. Is that true? Because Baylor in what was it? Was it 2016? Okay, Jim Grobe was the interim head coach that year. They ended up with 7 wins and 6 losses. The next year, Matt Rule came in. They won 1 game. But was it that big of a disaster? What was so bad about Baylor after Art Briles left? They had sanctions and they had issues and they couldn't get as many scholarships, I think. But what was so terrible that Matt Rule had to recover from? I don't know. You tell me. Because my understanding is it wasn't that bad of a deal. It was, it's still Baylor. They just have some sanctions. You move on. USC at one point had some issues, and USC was able to recover quickly after that. So, I don't know. Scott, thank you for the $5 super chat. Tyler says Rule would literally be saying no to millions of dollars if he takes a coaching job. He's sitting out a year. Tyler, I don't think that's true. I think a coach can come in, take the job, and then they're paid the difference in their whatever you call that, their buyout. So if he was to be paid $5 million at Nebraska this year, then the difference for this year would be owed by the Panthers. I don't think he would forego that entire buyout number. I don't think that's how it works. I like this comment. Roger says Zach is easy to spell. Hire him now. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a realistic option. I don't think that since he's going to fire him after 1 bad year, I just don't see it. But maybe. But Zach Taylor's an NFL coach. How would he do? How would he do in college? It'd be a risk, right? He's a builder in the NFL, though. But a lot of people are saying Zach Taylor. Interesting. I get it. I mean, it's hard not to. He went to the Super Bowl last year, so. And yeah, people are kind of questioning what I say. Zach Taylor's not a great hire at Nebraska. Just stop. I don't know that he isn't or is. I'm just saying I don't know, and that's why I can't say it's a great hire. There's so much unknown. Whereas with Urban Meyer, you know what you're getting, right? So that's how I judge the great hires versus the good hires versus the just okay hires. Sanctions, a ton of transfers, and no talent was at Baylor. I'll have to do some research on that. I know they had sanctions. I know that some players left. I'm not sure how many, though. Was it a ton of starters? I'll go and look. I'll do my research because I'm sure I'm going to have to do a video on Matt Rule and his time at Baylor. You guys will for sure want to see that because I'm going to do a deep dive, and especially if he gets to the final runway with Trev Alberts, and it looks like he could end up being named head coach. But I'll do research and I'll see. I just don't think it was as bad of a situation as people are talking about. He fixed it so quick, so maybe that's why I have this perception like it wasn't that big of a deal. But who knows? The difference, Roger, between Waco and Lincoln is that Waco's in Texas. They play in the Big 12. A lot of the teams who are down there are recruiting the same players, but they have a huge population base, right? And you get to play around your hometown because if you're coming from somewhere near Waco, let's say you're coming from Dallas a couple hours away, you get to play Texas, you get to play Oklahoma, you get to play Texas Tech, A&M, or not A&M, whoever. You get to play all these schools in the Big 12 who are all close to home. I think that really helps Baylor, and that's one thing that has made it easier to recruit for them. They haven't been a great recruiting school, though. It's not like they land any 5 stars. They don't land a ton of 4 stars. They just land good football players in Texas, and they have good coaches and a good culture. So that's been a plus for them. Davis says, what about Luke Fickell? Luke Fickell's a no-go. There's been no rumor about him. There's been no talk about him because Luke doesn't want to leave Ohio. Luke's waiting for a specific job, and he's already turned down other jobs. He's not coming to Nebraska, unfortunately. Here we go. And this is my thinking, and this is why I'm so nervous about the Rule thing when we talk about will he revive the program from nothing. In 2017, Rule's first year at Baylor, Baylor was the number 4 most talented Big 12 team. I'm not saying it, so it could be false, but I do trust my boy. I hope you're not letting me down, LSU. If this is true, what are we talking about? Matt Rule built Baylor back from nothing. Huh? Leipold built a team back from nothing. That's what a program builder looks like. Lane Kiffin built Ole Miss back from nothing. That's what a program builder looks like. Not this guy who came from Temple, had a decent time at Temple, won 10 games after the last coach won 9, 8 over and over, and then got in there with a great roster and was able to win whatever he won, 10, 11 games pretty quickly, and then bounced out. That's not a program builder to me. So I don't know. I'm just saying. Coronation's in the house. I hope that's true. I love Coronation. John's the man. I hope he is here. And it is true. He has the fourth strongest roster in the Big 12. So yeah, I have a really hard time accepting the fact that Matt Rule would be a great hire for Nebraska. Like I said it earlier. We're going to talk about it again. There's a difference between a poor hire, an okay hire, and a great hire. A poor hire is when you go out of your way to hire someone who isn't a fit because of your own personal bias. You call Mike Riley, even though he doesn't have the resume, and you say, hey, we want to bring you to Lincoln, even though you don't deserve it. But you look like what we want, what I want personally, and I think you could make it work. That's a bad hire. A good hire is when you do the work like USC did to court Lincoln Riley. You put together a massive deal. You say we're going to build new facilities and a brand new coach's office, and we're going to make sure this is the right place for you. We're going to make sure you have a personal driver to drive you from your $10 million mansion every single day to practice. And we're going to make sure that we have all the best players for you. So here's unlimited NIL money. That's courting a good coach. Oh, and we're going to ask you that you leave a blue blood program that you're taking to playoffs every year. Can you make it work? And that guy comes. That's a great hire. That AD deserves a raise. That first AD we talked about who made the poor hire deserves to be fired. Then you have the okay hire. The just okay. Just did enough to say you were doing your job, but it's not an A, it's not an F, it's a C grade. To me, that's Matt Rule. That's when you call the coach up and you say, hey, Matt, I know you're at home doing nothing, and there's no other job out there that you're going to take, because I know you don't want to be at Georgia Tech. I know you're not going out to the Pac-12 in Arizona State. I know Colorado's not an option. So, hey, we're available. Are you in? The guy says instantly, how much? Well, you already got $40 million on the back end, so how about we agree on 5? Sounds good to me. Great. See you Monday. You did the basics. We didn't need a search firm for that. We didn't need Trev Alberts for that. I could have done it. You could have done it. Any of us could have said, well, he won some games at some other schools. Let's bring him in. What? Maybe if they came out and said, well, look, we hired the search firm and we put together this whole thing. We ran all the analytics. Here's why this guy's a better option than all these others. Here's the fear. Let's wipe all that away. New topic on this. New point along the same topic. Okay. You have this head coach who you're going after. Wait, I want to get to chat really quick. Chat's on fire right now. I don't even want to continue on without answering some of your questions. I think it's a good point about mediocre hire. Don't want Rule. All right, guys, you aren't giving me any questions. You're just firing off. I call Trev and tell him to take Matt Rule off the list. I think Lane Kiffin inherited some talent from Hugh Freeze. Getting hot in my apartment, guys. Sorry. Would you be upset if we hire Bill O'Brien? Bill O'Brien fits in the same category to me as Matt Rule. You had Matt Rule, who we just talked about being an okay hire. It was a guy you just call. I had to turn my air on. It's getting hot. Matt Rule is a guy you just call. And once you call him, he says, yes, I'm coming. Bill O'Brien's the same way. Who wants Bill O'Brien? Maybe Georgia Tech. Maybe Auburn. But for the most part, Nebraska's the only school who's gonna come to the table with a real offer, who provides something that these coaches want. These coaches need to have a destination job that's going to give them the resources, give them the money, give them the facilities. And so we're one of the only options. Okay, here's another one. Is it just a bad year for coaches? I think it might be. Either that, or here's what's going to hurt Nebraska fans' hearts, because it hurts mine. Maybe Nebraska isn't the great job that we thought it was. Let that sink in, man, because I thought about it today. I thought, I have this picture of Nebraska in my head. They're a tier 2 school, former blue blood, whatever, $180 million facility. They have the best fans in the country, fantastic stadium. They're positioned in the middle of the country, so they should be able to be decent at recruiting if they have the right head coach. Why can't they attract one of these big names? Let's look in the freaking mirror. Is Nebraska the job we think it is? Or are we destined to get the Mike Rileys and these regular coaches who have done a little bit, enough to keep jobs and enough to be notable names in college football, but not enough to get the job at Texas, Oklahoma, Bama, Georgia, USC, Michigan, the big school? Is that what we are? Are we regular? Are we Baylor? Are we Kansas State? Would other coaches, if we call them, say, sure, I'm packing my bags tonight because you provide a great opportunity. It's not just about money. This is a school that I want to be at and I want to rebuild. Or are we at the point where we have to say, it's done? We are regular. We are basic. We are the C+ of the Big Ten. We are the new Purdue. Is that where we are? I don't know, man. Everyone's saying, Connor, chill. Listen. It's either that or it's there aren't many good coaches out there. Let's get off of the coach talk, because it's been a lot. It's been emotional for me. I have a lot of thoughts in my head. Let's talk about the game for a minute. So we talked about it a little bit earlier about the coaches, and if you're just tuning in, or if you haven't been on since the beginning, you might have missed that. To sum it up, we talked about the quarterback play. It's going to be super crucial for Nebraska to get the right quarterback in there. I think Chubba was at a disadvantage in that Illinois game. I think he's going to be much better prepared for this week, and it's not off the table that Casey Thompson could start. So if Casey Thompson doesn't start, I still have faith that Chubba can get it done. When I say get it done, I mean be serviceable. I don't mean that he can win, but I do think either way Nebraska covers 16 points. I already put my bet in, so if you didn't see it, it's right here. It's Nebraska plus 16. No one's accepted it yet, but they for sure will, because there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to fade Nebraska this week, knowing that they don't have a quarterback or assuming that they don't have a quarterback. Anyway, that's my initial take. The defense needs a lot of help this week, and the only way they're getting help is if the offense can perform. Here are some stats pulled up side by side. Nebraska versus Minnesota, and this is their national rank, okay? Nebraska's rushing offense ranks 72nd nationally. Their passing offense is 50th nationally. The biggest issue Nebraska's going to have is, can they establish the passing game if Chubba's in there? And if they can, and they can keep these numbers similar, I think Nebraska's going to be just fine. Again, not just fine in we're going to win the game, but just fine in we're going to be able to keep up, keep it close, be able to win the game, but if you don't have Casey Thompson, I feel like it's going to be hard just based off what we saw off Chuba. But either way, I think we're going to have a better performance out of him. Okay. These numbers need to stay similar. Nebraska is a team who can compete in any game as long as they can pass for 250 plus and rush for around 150. Minnesota, on the other hand, they are a strong rushing team. They have a guy named Mo Ibrahim. Their quarterback's okay. He's in his 6th year, whatever it is. They don't throw it very well. They don't throw it very often. They have a couple of good receivers, but nobody who's outstanding. Everything relies on this rushing attack. And this is very similar to what we saw last week with Illinois. What that should tell you is, and it's not as good as Illinois, Mo Ibrahim is a really good ground and pound back, but he doesn't have, I don't think he has breakaway speed. From what I've seen, he doesn't break many big runs. It's more of the 6-yard gain, 7-yard gain, 3-yard gain. It just kills you over time. Ultimately, it burns clock, right? It wears down your defensive line and your linebackers, and then they try to throw it here and there. But it's mostly about this run game. Okay. If Nebraska is in a similar situation as they were last week with Illinois, but this guy's less of a home run threat, I have a lot of faith that our defense is going to be able to contain him. The way that it gets out of hand, and when I say contain, he's going to run for over 100 yards on our defense. But I don't think he's going to go for over 200, and I don't think they're going to have this dominant rushing attack that we've seen in 2020 when we got blown out 34-7, that we saw, was it last year or 2021? It was 2021 when we lost 24-17, I think it was, at home, and they had a 20-something players out for COVID or injury or whatever it was. Anyway, the point is, I think the defense can maintain this average that they have on this screen, which is giving up 190 yards a game and 30 points a game. They can maintain that as long as the offense is serviceable, as long as the offense can move it down the field a little bit. This gets out of hand if they can't. I don't think Minnesota scores over 30 tomorrow if the offense is moving it a little bit. I think that the clock's going to run similar to what we saw in the Illinois game. I think that Illinois kind of set the standard for how to beat Nebraska right now with no quarterback. All you have to do is make it so their offense is one-dimensional, shut them down and don't allow first downs, and then get the ball and just run it down their throat over and over because the defensive line and the linebackers, like I said before, are going to be worn down. So the Minnesota defense is much stronger than the Minnesota offense. They've got the 4th best scoring defense. They don't play anybody. Keep that in mind. They shut Rutgers out last week, but who's Rutgers? They also played Iowa. They played Illinois. They just played offenses who are just gross. Their passing defense only gives up 168 yards a game. Their rush D, 106 yards a game. Their passing defense plays a lot of zone, no man. And I'm not sure how that's going to impact Trey Palmer. I'm not sure if he's better off in man or better off in zone. Probably better off in man and one-on-one spots, getting deep downfield. But when you're in zone, he could find things underneath. He could find little pockets. If you have a quarterback who can make the throws, I think he could thrive because after you make a catch in zone, they give you enough room to where you can make a move. When you're in man-to-man, you catch the ball and get brought down immediately. That's typically how it works if you're looking at it from an elementary level, right? I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing to see. Here's one stat that I thought was really interesting, and I would say more important than interesting. The sack numbers here. Minnesota has 10 sacks on the year. Nebraska has 12. Their pass rush is actually worse than Nebraska's is, which is insane. It's a massive boost because if we don't have a great quarterback in there, this is going to help him a lot if he doesn't have a bunch of pressure in his face. Illinois was able to get to the quarterback a few times last week, and maybe if Minnesota's giving these guys more time, it'll help us out. They're obviously better in the turnover category. Nebraska's always been terrible in the turnover margin, at least as long as Scott Frost has been around. And I don't expect to win the turnover battle, at least not this year, against any of these teams. But either way, we can still compete. They are the number 1 third down conversion team in the country. They convert 60% of their third downs into firsts, which is insanity. And in the red zone, 89%. I didn't look at exactly how many, but that would be something like getting the red zone 30 times and you score 28 out of those 30 times. So, or 28 out of 33 or something. But anyway, that's kind of the breakdown overview I didn't do a bunch of research into what Nebraska's got going on this week. I do know Nebraska gets Brock Bando back. I don't know about Kevin Williams. I do know that with Brock Bando, it's going to help them a lot. They need more help on that offensive line. Guys get worn out. They have to fill guys in and rotate them. And if you have less guys who had significant playing time, you're playing with guys like Latovsky, who have been known to miss blocks, or Hunter Anthony, who's had his moments, right? So just having any depth back is helping at this point. And yeah, it'd be really helpful to have Casey. So that's a quick overview of Minnesota. I still love Nebraska plus 16 no matter what. In any situation, Nebraska's at home. They have hardcore fans. Big Ten West teams like to run the ball once they get up. And when they like to run the ball, the clock bleeds. And when the clock bleeds, whether we score or not, knees happen, we cover 16, and we all win. Because at the end of the day, even if Nebraska loses, at least my pockets are happy. Think of it that way. Tom says Minnesota has 10 points against Purdue, 14 points against Illinois, 17 points against Penn State. And I get it. Nebraska's defense hasn't been dominant, but this isn't a high-scoring, prolific offense. They're a ground and pound. They're a chew clock. So I think Nebraska's going to be in a position to keep it close towards the end. And if they have a quarterback who's decent, yeah, we could outright win. I'm not saying that we can't win this game. I truly believe Nebraska can win any of them. Anyway, guys, I think we had a great live today. We talked about a lot. I'm reading through chat. Some people are saying the video's blurry. I don't know why. Anyway, maybe we'll do a live stream tomorrow night. I'll do some picks tomorrow for the rest of the games for college. We'll just come and BS if you guys want to see it. But we've been live for an hour and 22 minutes. We talked about a lot. We talked about the coach search. We talked about the rumors from today. We talked a lot about Matt Rule. We talked about what rumors would make sense, which ones wouldn't. We talked about this Minnesota game. We talked about why I'm betting the way I'm betting. And we just BS with each other because we're all friends, and I got a great time being here with you. So if you enjoyed the stream, please hit the like button because it really helps support the channel. I know all you guys are subscribed because you're my day ones. You're my most loyal. We're almost at 15,000 subscribers. So if you know someone who's a fan of Nebraska and you haven't shared the channel with them yet, maybe you think about doing it. But thank you for being here. I will see you guys tomorrow. Go Big Red.